I don't know what I'm doing posting this here. Maybe I just need to say it out loud, or maybe I want someone, anyone, to tell me I'm not crazy for feeling this way. But honestly, I'm scared I already know the answer. I'm 36. Married. One kid. Mortgage. Golden retriever. I've built a good life, or at least, a life that looks good on the outside. Her name's Emily. My wife. We met through friends at a 4th of July barbecue when we were in our late 20s. She had that kind of smile that makes you feel like the sun came out just for you. Smart, steady, responsible. She always called her parents on Sundays, had a 5-year plan, and knew how to file taxes without getting a headache. She made sense. We made so I married her. But here's the thing. There's someone else. Not in the cheating sense. Not physically. Not yet. But she's there. In the back of my mind. At night when I'm brushing my teeth. In old songs. In random street corners. She's there. Her name's Jess. And she was fire. Wild. Unpredictable. The kind of person who would suggest driving 5 hours just to see the sunrise somewhere new, and actually mean it. She had chaos in her eyes and freedom in her laugh. We were on and off for almost 4 years, from college until our mid-20s. It was the kind of relationship that burns too bright. We fought like hell, loved like we were running out of time, made up in all the wrong ways. She scared me, honestly. Made me feel things I didn't know I could feel. Good and bad. And one day, I just walked away. I told myself I wanted peace. Stability. A future I could count on. So I deleted her number, blocked her on everything, and built a new life. But then, 3 weeks ago, I saw her. By accident. In the most ordinary way. I was at this coffee shop downtown, waiting for my latte, scrolling through emails on my phone, when I heard her laugh. I hadn't heard it in almost a decade, but I swear to God, my spine recognized it before my brain did. I looked up, and there she was. Jess. In a leather jacket, hair a little shorter, but the same fire in her eyes. She looked older. Wiser. Still dangerous. She was with someone. A guy. They were laughing. She didn't see me. I didn't even get my coffee. I just walked out, heart pounding like I was being chased. Since then, I've been unraveling. I find myself checking her old Instagram, even though it's private now. I think about what she's doing, who she's become, if she ever thinks about me, about us. Emily notices I've been distant. I tell her work's just been stressful. It's not a lie exactly. My job is a mess right now, but that's not what's keeping me up at night. What's haunting me is the possibility that I made the wrong choice, that I picked safety over passion, that I married someone I liked because I was too scared to fight for someone I loved. I keep going back to this photo. It's from our wedding. Emily's in white, looking radiant. I'm next to her, in a rented tux, smiling like a man who has no idea the ghost of another woman is already sitting in the back row of his mind. That ghost has been getting louder, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. I didn't mean to spiral. At least, not like this. After I saw Jess at that coffee shop, it was like someone knocked over a carefully balanced tower of Jenga blocks I'd been building for years. Not all at once. Just one piece here, another there, until the whole thing started to sway. I kept telling myself it was nostalgia, that I just needed to get it out of my system. Look her up once, remember the chaos, and then go back to my clean, safe life. But I couldn't stop. Every time I opened my phone, I had this itch. This compulsive urge to search for her, as if seeing a single picture would give me peace. I found an old email address. I searched through years of Google Photos and stumbled across a video she once sent me on my birthday. Just her, singing badly into a wooden spoon, dancing around her tiny apartment in socks and a t-shirt that probably belonged to me. I watched it 5 times. That night, I climbed into bed beside Emily, and for the first time in years, I felt like a fraud. Here's the thing about marriage that no one tells you. Sometimes it's just 2 people silently scrolling on their phones next to each other, day after day, until the space between you becomes permanent. Emily's great. She's a phenomenal mom. She keeps our life on track. But we don't talk anymore, not really. We exchange information. Calendars. Grocery lists. Updates about daycare and bills and who's taking the car in for service. It used to be different. When we first got together, it was comfortable. Easy. I mistook that ease for compatibility. I told myself that love shouldn't hurt, that it shouldn't be work. Now I wonder if I confused comfort with complacency. The other night, we were watching some Netflix show, something about a woman who runs into her ex years later and starts to question everything, and Emily said, half laughing, "God, can you imagine?" Running into someone you used to love and wondering if you messed up your whole life. I froze. She didn't notice. I couldn't sleep after that. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, heart racing like I'd been caught doing something I hadn't even done. The worst part? I did imagine it. I've been imagining it every day since that coffee shop. Except it's not a fantasy. It's my reality. I'm living the version of my life I chose, but it's not the one I want anymore. A few days later, I broke. I emailed Jess. Just one line. Hey, it's me. I saw you the other day. I didn't say anything. But, hi. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before hitting send. My hands were sweating. My chest was tight. I didn't expect a reply. But she did. Hey. Wow. I thought that was you. Took me a second to be sure. Hi back. That was it. But it unlocked something in me. A floodgate. I wrote back. We started emailing. Just small things. Safe things. Have you been? Where are you living now? What are you doing these days? She works at a nonprofit now. Lives 2 cities over. No kids. Not married. The guy she was with at the coffee shop? Just a friend. Her words, not mine. And then she said this. You always ran away before you gave anything time to get real. Ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't? It hit me like a truck. Because yes, I wonder that every single day. I didn't reply right away. I needed time. But my thoughts were spinning. Emily asked me later that night if I was okay. I said yes. I lied. I keep going through the motions, but I feel like I'm watching someone else live my life. My daughter asked me to help with her science project, and while I sat there helping her glue popsicle sticks into a bridge, my brain was somewhere else. With Jess. With a past that suddenly feels more vivid than my present. And then yesterday happened. Emily borrowed my laptop. She needed to print something for work. And she found the emails. She didn't say anything right away. I found out the way a man finds out he's in trouble, not through confrontation, but silence. That tight, humming kind of silence that makes your stomach drop. That night, she asked, is there something you need to tell me? I paused for too long. That was enough. I tried to explain that it wasn't an affair, that I never touched her, that it was just emails, words, curiosity. Emily just looked at me and said, do you love her? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Because maybe I did. And maybe that was worse than anything I could have admitted. After I didn't answer Emily's question, she just stood up and walked into the bedroom. She closed the door quietly, no slamming, no yelling. That's the kind of person she is. Calm, composed, terrifying in her restraint. I sat on the couch for 2 hours, just staring at the dark TV screen, my mind running in circles. My daughter was already asleep upstairs. I kept thinking, how did I get here? How did a single coffee shop sighting spiral into the unraveling of my marriage? The next morning, Emily didn't speak to me. She moved around the kitchen like a ghost, packing our daughter's lunch, sipping coffee, never once looking me in the eye. I tried to say something. I don't even remember what, but she just shook her head and said, not now. Not now. The thing is, I never meant to hurt her. I swear. I wasn't trying to sabotage my life. I just needed to know. Needed to understand if the choice I made all those years ago was really the right one. I thought I could look back without falling in. But I was wrong. I hadn't heard from Jess since that last email. The one where she asked what would have happened if I hadn't walked away. That email had been sitting in my inbox like a ticking bomb, waiting for me to decide what kind of man I was going to be. I finally wrote her back. I used to tell myself I left because we were toxic, that we wouldn't have lasted. But maybe I left because I was scared of how much I felt, of what it would mean to choose you. And now I don't know if I made the biggest mistake of my life. She responded 2 days later. I used to think you'd come back one day, that you'd knock on my door and say you were ready. Then I stopped waiting. I moved on, or thought I did. And then I saw you. And now I don't know anymore either. That was the moment the ground shifted. I realized it wasn't just me chasing a ghost. Jess was still in this too. Maybe not fully. Maybe cautiously. But she hadn't let go either. That changed everything. I want to talk to Emily, but how do you tell your wife you're emotionally tangled with someone else without tearing her apart? She beat me to it. 3 nights after she found the emails, she came into the living room after putting our daughter to bed. She sat down on the edge of the couch, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, tell me everything. No lies. No minimizing. I want to hear it all. So I told her. Not just about the emails. About Jess. Our history. The intensity. The breakup. The confusion I felt then, and the confusion I feel now. I didn't spare her. I figured if she was going to leave me, she deserved to know the truth I'd buried even from myself. She cried, quietly, but she didn't leave the room. She asked, "Do you want to leave me?" And I said, "I don't know. I've never seen someone look so wounded." She whispered, "That's worse than yes." We didn't speak after that. We just sat there, the silence heavy between us. The next morning, she told me to stay at a hotel for a few days. "We need space," she said. "Our daughter doesn't need to see us pretending everything's okay." So I packed a bag. I drove to a Holiday Inn near the highway, and for the first time in years, I was completely alone with my thoughts. And they were loud. Jess emailed again. "Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, unsure of how to respond. Because no, I wasn't okay. I was falling apart. I was in a hotel room with a suitcase full of wrinkled button-downs and a toothbrush that still smelled like my marriage. But I didn't tell her that. I asked her if she'd meet me. She didn't reply right away. I sat there, phone in hand, refreshing my inbox like a teenager. An hour later, she said yes. We picked a small cafe between our cities. Neutral territory. Saturday afternoon. 2 days away. I told myself I just needed closure. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. I didn't sleep the night before I saw Jess. It was one of those restless, heart-thumping nights where the world feels too quiet and your brain won't stop playing out every possible outcome. I must have stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about what I'd say, what I wouldn't say, how I'd look at her without looking too long. I told myself it wasn't a date. I wasn't cheating. It was just two people, catching up, trying to understand what went wrong, right? I left the hotel early, got there almost 45 minutes before we were supposed to meet. The cafe was one of those little places tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. Small tables, warm light, indie music playing just a little too softly to hear the lyrics. The kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. I picked a seat in the corner, facing the door. My palms were sweaty. I felt like a teenager again, waiting for a first date, except this time I was a married man with a daughter and a suitcase full of bad decisions. And then she walked in. Jess. 10 years, and somehow she still had that same gravity. That same unapologetic presence. Like she owned the room without even trying. Her hair was darker now, shoulder length. She wore a denim jacket over a faded black dress, sunglasses on top of her head like she'd just stepped out of a different version of my life. She saw me and smiled. Not the wild, reckless grin I remembered, but something smaller, softer, wiser. She sat down without a word. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other, like we were trying to recognize who we'd become. "Hi," I finally said. "Hi," she echoed, her voice a little quieter than I remembered. There was a long pause. Not uncomfortable, just full. Then she leaned in and said, "So, what the hell are we doing?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. Because, yeah, what were we doing? "I don't know," I admitted. "I saw you, and something in me cracked open." She nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. I thought I was over it. Over you. But when I saw you, it was like my chest remembered something my brain forgot. I looked down at my coffee. "I'm married. You know that?" "Yeah." I saw the ring. "I have a daughter." I figured. Silence again. "But," I said, "I can't stop thinking about you." "That's the truth." Jess didn't smile. She didn't look triumphant or pleased. In fact, she looked sad. "I used to beg the universe for you to say that," she said quietly. "Back when it would have meant something." That hit harder than I expected. "I never stopped caring about you," I said. I didn't know how to care for you right. I was scared. Of how much you needed. Of how much I felt. You were a wildfire. And I ran. And now?" she asked, eyes narrowing slightly. "Now I'm sitting in a cafe 10 years later, wondering if I lit the wrong fire." She looked out the window, her fingers brushing the rim of her cup. "I'm not the same girl, you know. I've been through things. Learned how to build my own walls. You might not like who I've become. Maybe I deserve that. You definitely do." I smiled, painfully. "I'm not here for a fairy tale. I just needed to see you. I needed to know if what we had was real, or just something I made up in my head after I buried it." Just looked at me again. "Oh, it was real. Too real." That was the problem. We talked for almost 2 hours. About everything. Our old fights. The trips we took. The night we broke up, the real reason, which neither of us had said out loud back then. She wanted me to move to New York with her for a new job. I said no. She called me a coward. I told her she was selfish. Now, with 10 years of distance, it sounded like two scared kids making adult decisions with half-formed hearts. When it was time to leave, she stood up slowly. So, what now? I didn't have an answer. I don't know. She nodded. I'm not asking you to blow up your life. I don't want to be the reason your daughter grows up with weekends and custody exchanges. But I also don't want to be a fantasy you visit when you're lonely. I swallowed hard. I'm not trying to use you. Maybe not on purpose, she said. But you're standing at a cliff, and if you don't jump, don't bring me to the edge with you. She leaned and then kissed me on the cheek. Not romantic. Not sexual. Just final. I loved you, she whispered. I think part of me always will. But love isn't a time machine. And then she walked away. And I just stood there, watching her fade down the sidewalk like a dream I wasn't sure I ever deserved. When I got back to the hotel, there was a text from Emily. We need to talk. Tonight. When I walked back into the house that night, everything looked the same, but felt completely different. The hallway light was on. Emily was in the kitchen. The dishwasher hummed in the background. Our daughter was already asleep. A normal Tuesday on paper, but I knew it wasn't. Emily sat at the kitchen table with her laptop closed in front of her, a cup of tea steaming beside her like some small symbol of control. She didn't look angry. That was the scariest part. You saw her, she said without looking up. I didn't deny it. I sat down across from her, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I did. She nodded, slowly. Did you sleep with her? No, she tilted her head, eyes narrowing. Would you have, if she let you? I didn't answer right away. And that was answer enough. Emily took a breath steady, sharp, like it physically hurt her to inhale. You know, I always knew there was someone before me. Someone you didn't talk about. I thought maybe I'd replace her in time. But you kept her buried like a time capsule. I was just waiting for it to crack open. I tried to speak, but she held up her hand. I'm not going to scream at you. That would be easier. But this is worse. Watching you drift further away while you convince yourself it's not cheating because you didn't touch her. I looked down at the table. My reflection warped in the polished wood. It wasn't just about her, I finally said. It was about me. About the person I was, the person I thought I wanted to be. Seeing her brought it all back, and suddenly, I didn't know if I'd built my life or settled into it. Her voice cracked a little. Do you think you settled with me? My throat tightened. I think I chose you. I thought that meant something. Did it? I didn't know how to answer that without hurting her more. But maybe the damage had already been done. She leaned back in her chair and wiped under her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. Do you love her? I don't know what I feel anymore. It's not simple. It never was. Then let me make it simple for you. She stood up and slid a folded piece of paper across the table. Her handwriting on the outside, if. I opened it. Inside were 2 lists. One labeled, if you stay. The other, if you go. The first one said, counseling. Honesty. Trust. Broken but not gone. Family. Work. So much work. The second, co-parenting schedule. Lawyers. Starting over. Regret. Freedom. Guilt. Maybe her. I stared at the list for a long time. I'm not making this decision for you, she said. But I'm not living with a man who has 1 foot out the door anymore. You don't get to keep us both. That was the moment something inside me finally cracked wide open. Not from anger. From clarity. I realized I'd been treating Jess like a window to another life, and Emily like a door I didn't want to close. I was standing in between, trying to keep both open, hoping I could time travel back to the version of me that didn't mess everything up. But life doesn't work that way. I looked up at Emily. Her eyes were tired, but not cruel. She looked like someone who wanted the truth more than revenge. I'll go stay with my brother for a while, I said quietly. Her mouth twitched. Maybe disappointment. Maybe relief. Maybe both. Before I could say anything else, our daughter's voice called from upstairs. Mommy. Emily turned her head toward the staircase. Go to her, I said. I'll leave tonight. She paused at the base of the stairs and looked back at me. You owe her a real goodbye, she said softly. And you owe yourself an honest answer about what you're running toward, not just what you're running from. I sat there in the kitchen long after they were upstairs, long after the tea went cold and the dishwasher stopped humming. I looked at the list again. Then I took out my phone and opened a new message. To Jess, can we meet again? Just once more. I need to ask you something I should have asked a long time ago. Just agreed to meet. This time, we picked somewhere quieter. A park on the edge of the city. Early evening. That hour when everything turns gold and the world slows down just enough to feel like it's holding its breath. She was already there when I arrived. Sitting on a bench under a tree, arms folded, sunglasses on even though the sun was dipping low. She didn't get up. She just patted the space beside her, like this wasn't our second act, like I was just 5 minutes late and nothing had happened in between. I sat down beside her. I didn't think you'd actually ask to see me again, she said, not looking at me. I didn't think you'd say yes. She shrugged. I was curious. We sat in silence for a bit, watching a kid ride his bike in erratic circles near the path. There was this weird peacefulness to it, like everything was holding back judgment, waiting to see what we'd say. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Plain. Worn at the corners. She handed it to me. What's this? I wrote it after we broke up. Never sent it. Found it a couple weeks ago. Thought maybe you should read it. I hesitated, then opened it. Her handwriting hit me like a memory I forgot I had. You said I was too much. Too wild. That we wouldn't last. And maybe you're right. Maybe I would have burned out, and you would have faded, and we'd have destroyed each other eventually. But you never gave us the chance. You were always half in, half out. Like you were waiting for permission to go. And I wanted you to fight for me. Just once. But you didn't. So I'll fight for myself. But I need you to know something. I loved you in a way that scared me. And I think that's why you left. Because deep down, you knew you'd never find it again. I read it twice. Maybe 3 times. My throat tightened with every line. I was scared, I said finally. Back then. Of needing you too much. Of being needed. I didn't know how to be loved like that. Just still hadn't looked at me. So why now? Why come back? You have a life. A good one. Because I don't know who I am anymore, I admit it. I don't know if I made the right choice. Or if I just made the safe one. She turned her head then. Her eyes were red around the edges. That's the problem, she said. You're still making this about a choice. Like you're standing in front of 2 doors, weighing the pros and cons. But people aren't doors. We're not escape routes. We're not backup plans. I felt the sting of that truth. And I knew she was right. I'm sorry, I said. For everything. For how I left. For dragging you into this again. Just stood up then, and for a second, I thought she might walk away. But instead, she just looked down at me and said something I'll never forget. You didn't come back for me. You came back for who you were with me. That's not the same thing. I opened my mouth to protest, to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I had been chasing a version of myself I thought I lost. The man who felt alive. Unpredictable. Wild. But I'd been trying to resurrect him through her, and that wasn't fair. To either of us. Jess reached into her bag one more time. Pulled out a small photo. One of those old Polaroids from a party I barely remembered. I was in it. Smiling. Arm around her shoulders. She was laughing. We looked young. She handed it to me. Keep it. Not to torture yourself, but to remind you of who you were. And who you are not anymore. I took it. And for the first time since this whole spiral began, I didn't feel fire or longing or regret. I felt peace. Bittersweet. But real. I don't think I'm supposed to be with you, I said. But I think I needed to see you to let go of that fantasy. Jess smiled. And it was genuine. You're not the only one who needed to let go, she said. We hugged. Not the kind of hug that says I want you back. The kind that says goodbye. Then she turned, and this time, I didn't watch her walk away. I looked down at the photo in my hand, then up at the sky. The sun had dipped below the trees. Everything was fading to blue. And somehow, that felt okay. When I got back to my brother's place that night, there was a message from Emily. Our daughter asked if you were coming home soon. Just that. But it felt like an invitation. Or a challenge. Maybe both. I stared at that message from Emily for a long time. Our daughter asked if you were coming home soon. Not, I want you to come home. Not, we miss you. Just a reminder. A fact. A child's question passed along like a test. I didn't respond right away. Because I knew whatever I said next had to mean something. I couldn't keep floating between guilt and nostalgia, between the life I had and the one I thought I'd wanted. So I sat down, looked at the photo Jess had given me, and whispered to the guy in the picture, "You're done chasing ghosts." Then I texted Emily back, "Can we talk first?" She replied a minute later, "Tomorrow night. After bedtime." That day was long. I spent most of it pacing my brother's guest room, pretending to work, reading old journal entries I hadn't touched in years. Back when Emily and I were still new, I used to write about how peaceful she made me feel. How calm. How safe. I don't think I ever realized what a gift that was. How rare. When I pulled into the driveway the next night, everything looked the same, the porch light buzzing faintly, the same din in the mailbox, but it felt like I was walking into someone else's house. My daughter answered the door. "Daddy." Her arms wrapped around my waist before I could even shut the door behind me. She smelled like bubble bath and cereal, and I nearly lost it right there on the mat. I hugged her harder than I meant to. Emily stood at the end of the hallway, watching. We didn't speak right away. I helped tuck our daughter in, read her a story badly, kissed her forehead. Then we moved to the kitchen. Same table. Same 2 mugs. Like nothing had changed and everything had. Emily didn't waste time. Did you sleep with her? No, I said. I told you before. I didn't. She nodded slowly. And you're done? Yes. Another pause. Because she said no? Or because you mean it? That one hurt. But I deserved it. Because I finally saw what I've been doing, I said. I was chasing an old version of myself, trying to feel something that wasn't missing. It was just hard to feel. You get older, you build a life, and one day you wake up and wonder where the sparks went. Just felt like fire again. But that doesn't mean I should burn everything down to chase it. Emily folded her hands in front of her. She looked tired, but strong. You say you didn't cheat, she said. But it doesn't feel that way to me. I know. And I'm sorry. I should have come to you when the doubt started. Instead, I buried it and made it someone else's problem. Why didn't you? Because I didn't want to admit I was scared. That part came out quieter than I meant it to. Scared of what? Of being stuck. Of turning into someone who settled. But now I think I misunderstood what settling even means. Emily leaned back, staring at me like she was seeing someone she didn't quite recognize. So what do you want now? I didn't answer right away. I let the silence fill the room. Then I said it. I want to come home. But not just physically. I want to rebuild what I broke. I want to earn your trust again. I know it won't be easy. And I know you don't owe me that chance. But I'm here. If you'll have me. She didn't say anything. She just stood up, walked to the counter, and opened a drawer. Pulled out a sheet of paper. It was a list. Her list. If you stay. She unfolded it, smoothed it out on the table, and grabbed a pen. Then she added another line. Therapy. Together and apart. Then another. Total honesty. Even when it's ugly. Then she underlined one of the old ones. Work. So much work. She handed it to me. I'm not saying yes, she said. I'm saying prove it. I nodded. And I didn't cry. Not then. But something shifted in my chest. Something uncoiled. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again, not because things were fixed, but because the truth was finally on the table. I stayed that night. On the couch. My daughter tiptoed down in the morning and woke me up by climbing on top of me and whispering, Mommy said you might live here again. Might, I whispered back. If I behave. She giggled and buried her face in my shirt. I looked toward the hallway and saw Emily watching. We didn't speak. But she didn't look away. And for now, that was enough. There's this idea people have about reconciliation that if someone stays, if they say they're willing to work on things, the worst is over. That's a lie. The staying is just the start of the real fight. It's everything that comes after the big decision, the early mornings when no one speaks, the glances that linger just a little too long on a phone screen, the hesitation before touching a hand you once held without thinking. Emily let me stay. But it wasn't welcome home. It was earn your place back. And I respected that. We started therapy 3 weeks after that night at the kitchen table. First together, then separately. Our therapist, Miriam, was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and unflinching. She didn't let me get away with vague answers. She had this way of tilting her head that said, try again. The truth, please. In our first couples session, she asked us both the same question. What do you want out of this? Emily said, to not hate him. I said, to become someone she doesn't have to doubt. That answer stuck with me, because I'd never actually said it out loud before. I had spent so long reacting to guilt, to shame, to the fear of loss. I hadn't paused to ask who I wanted to be on purpose. That became my homework. But the work was brutal. We had fights. Quiet ones, sharp ones, the kind that don't shake the walls but leave bruises anyway. Emily asked questions that made me squirm. What did Jess give you that I didn't? When did you start lying? What else have you buried? Sometimes I had answers. Sometimes I didn't. And there were landmines. One night, Emily found an old letter Jess had written me. I'd kept it in a folder in my work bag, tucked between expense reports and drafts of a marketing proposal. I didn't even know it was still there. When she found it, she didn't yell. She just laid it on the kitchen table and said, do you want to keep her close? Or did you just forget how much power she still has? I tried to explain it wasn't about Jess. It was about remembering who I was. Facing it. She said, then frame it. Put it on your wall. Own it. Don't hide it in the shadows and call it closure. I threw the letter out, not to prove something to her, but because I realized I had been keeping it like a totem, something I could hold onto in the dark when I didn't know who I was anymore. But I'm not that man now. Or at least, I'm trying not to be. Our daughter kept me grounded through a lot of this. Kids have a way of seeing past the mess, straight into the core of things. She didn't ask questions she didn't understand. She just noticed when I was home, when I showed up, when I said yes to playing dress up, and no to work emails after dinner. I started seeing Emily in a new light, too. Not just as the woman I heard, but as a person who'd built her own kind of strength in the aftermath. She didn't forgive me all at once. Honestly, I'm not sure she has yet. But she opened the door. That's more than I deserved. Then came the twist. One afternoon, I got an email. No subject line. No message. Just an attachment. It was a photo. Me and Jess. From that day in the park. The goodbye meeting. I was sitting on the bench, looking at her like my whole life was balanced on what she'd say next. She was standing, mid-step, turning back with a faint smile. It was a private moment, intimate in its own quiet way, and someone had taken the photo without us knowing. My blood ran cold. I stared at the sender. It was from a burner account. No identifying info. Just the image. I didn't know what to do with it. Who sent it? Why? Was it her? Jess? No. That didn't make sense. She had no reason to send it anonymously. She'd said her goodbye, and she meant it. So who? I didn't tell Emily right away. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I was scared she'd think the past was still following me, that I was still in it. But guilt isn't something you can outrun, and secrets always rot from the inside. I finally showed her the photo 2 nights later. She studied it in silence for a long time. Then she asked, "Do you think someone's trying to punish you?" Maybe. Do you still want to be punished? The question gutted me, because deep down, I think I did. Some part of me believed I needed to suffer before I could move forward, that I had to carry my failure like penance. But that's not how healing works. You don't get better by bleeding. You get better by stopping the wound from bleeding more. Emily put the photo in a drawer. Didn't tear it up. Didn't frame it. Just put it away. Next time, she said, tell me the moment it happens. No more silence. I nodded, and we sat there at the table again, 2 mugs between us. The air heavy, but not suffocating. I'm still sleeping in the guest room. I still wear the ring. And for the first time, I think she started to believe me when I say I'm not looking for a way out anymore. I'm looking for a way through. I wasn't expecting resolution. I knew this would take time, weeks, months, maybe years. What I wasn't expecting, though, was the paranoia. After that anonymous email, something in me shifted. Not because of what the photos showed, but because someone out there knew about it. Knew where we'd been. When. And they had chosen not to just watch, but to say something without saying anything at all. That kind of silence screams. It eats at you in the quiet moments. I started triple-checking my inbox.